Ball to discuss. Tony, you ready to go full steam?
I'm Tony Kornheiser. How about half steam because we're on ESPN2?
Oh, okay.
What do you think?
Well, I guess it's
Yeah,
good we're not on
steam.
news because we go a quarter steam. Suppose we were on the U.
Yeah.
What would be left? No steam.
I would take the jacket and the tie off and just leave.
Well, there you go.
There'd be no point in doing it at all. Yeah, why would I do it? Welcome to PTI, boys and girls. In today's episode, the Ravens beat the Cowboys. Andy Dalton lights up the Raiders, and Colorado comes back to beat Baylor. But we begin today with the four 3-0 teams in the NFL. Seattle, which clobbered Miami yesterday 24-3. Pittsburgh, which beat the previously unbeaten Chargers 20-10. Minnesota, which pasted previously unbeaten Houston 34-7.
Man.
And Kansas City, which squeaked by Atlanta 22-17. So, Wilbon, which one team is impressing you the most?
Okay, I'm going to eliminate the Chiefs because they could be 0-3. And I realize you're the champs. You're getting everybody's best shot every week. All you got to do is, as they say, survive in advance. So I get that. So let me give the Chiefs a clap and now say, get off the stage for this purpose. The Seahawks, I'm not all the way bought in yet. They are doing a hell of a job with the youngest head coach in the league, by the way, in Seattle. That's fine, but I'm going to narrow it down between the Vikings and the Steelers. The Vikings beat a team I think will be in the AFC Championship game at home, beat Houston. But I'm going to go to the Steelers, Tony, and you know that I'm looking at Justin Fields, and I got some sort of former skin in that game. And I sat here for 3 years, and I said, if Justin Fields is better coached, we don't have all these questions. The Bears don't even draft Caleb Williams. If Justin Fields was adequately coached. He wasn't in Chicago, but he is being that so far in Pittsburgh. And it's not just Mike Tomlin, okay? You got Arthur Smith, the offensive guru and offensive coach, who people said they know what he's doing when he gets there. And whether it's Russell Wilson, who's going to be better than he was in Denver and better than he was at the end in Seattle, but Justin Fields is the guy. They're undefeated. They understand all of it. It's not just the offense, but I'm going to go with Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers and Justin Fields, who I am glad to see having the success he's having so far.
We are going to be at odds on this one. I understand the impulse to go to Minnesota because Minnesota lost a franchise quarterback in Kirk Cousins. Pittsburgh did not lose a franchise quarterback because they've had quarterback issues for the last 2 or 3 years in Pittsburgh. And Sam Darnold has been tremendous, and he's been around the league much longer than Justin Fields, for example.
A little longer.
The other night, he had, much longer than Justin Fields. The other night the other day, he had 4 touchdown passes. He's been a revelation. He's got 8 touchdown passes and 2 interceptions. And they beat Houston. They throttled Houston.
Did.
Houston is really good. And this is the week after they beat San Francisco, and they are already plus 55. So a reasonable person would say, okay, go with Minnesota. I'm going to do just what you dismissed. I'm going to say Kansas City has impressed me the most so far, and I'm going to concede that Kansas City could have lost all 3 games, could have lost to Baltimore, could have lost to Cincinnati, could have lost last night to Atlanta, but they won. This is my point. They won, even though they're only plus 13. And what you said is true. They get everybody's best shot. And they continue to win. So whereas I think that Minnesota is the most surprising, I think Kansas City is the most impressive. And I'll just mention this in passing. It's interesting to me that both Sam Darnold and Geno Smith is in Seattle, obviously, were busts beyond belief with the Jets. And then they were itinerants around the league. And now they've each reached a spot. They've each reached a spot where they're doing very well.
Yeah.
You know, and this is different than Justin Fields. Justin Fields wasn't a bust. Chicago had the overall number 1. Yeah. So, you can understand.
Let's give
Caleb
Kevin
Williams.
O'Connell, let's give Wes Phillips, grandson of Bum Phillips, and let's give Josh McCown, formerly Hot to Trot. They're dealing with Sam Darnold in a way, again, adequately coached, inadequately coached. That's a big deal. We got to look up for errors and omissions, Sam Darnold. To me, Sam Darnold may be in his 5th year. You got him much longer than Justin Fields, who's in his 4th year. We'll see about that for errors and omissions.
He's in his 7th year.
He's in his 7th year.
He's
been around that long?
Yes, it's sufficiently longer than Fields. It is.
The Ravens followed my advice and are finally in the win column. Baltimore fed Derrick Henry until he was full. And the big man went for $151 and 2 touchdowns to beat the Cowboys in Dallas. And there were a few tense moments at the end. So what, Tony? Have the Ravens in the process convinced you they're back on track?
No, they have not convinced me. Once again, they had a big lead in the fourth. You know, it wasn't the 10-point lead that they blew a couple of weeks ago. It was they were up 28-6. It was a 22-point lead in the fourth, and they almost blew the game. They were on their way to cruising to a very, very impressive victory, and then the thing became a nail-biter. Mike, there's a statistic here that is worth quoting. They have been outscored, the Ravens, in the fourth quarter this year, 39-17.
Yeah.
In the fourth quarter, they allowed Dallas to come back. Like, I really like Lamar Jackson. That run for the first down iced the game, but they're nervous with the lead, Mike, so they haven't convinced me. I think the larger issue here is Dallas. I'm not convinced or impressed or moved by the fact that they had that big comeback. What were they doing being down 28-6 in the fourth at home? Third game in a row where they're basically blown out at home.
Yeah.
Green Bay in the playoffs, New Orleans a little while ago, and now this particular game with Baltimore. So, I mean, we had Booger McFarland on last week. He said the defense was soft. He's right. The defense is soft.
It's non-existent. You got guys out there who are egomaniacs who just want to rush the passer so they get paid. And that's what they do. I don't want to hear about Michael Parsons being Lawrence Taylor. Put that away, all right? Because Lawrence Taylor wasn't some one-dimensional dude who just wanted to get paid by rushing the passer. Yes, he could kill the quarterback, he could, but he could also kill your running back and cover your tight end and do everything else you needed to do. Michael Parsons doesn't seem interested, but he keeps talking about people doing their jobs and not being Supermans. How about the Dallas Cowboys look pretty? They look like a dumb team. They look inadequate and soft and not particularly smart. And that would be from the coaching corner office all the way down through the ranks of the players. So that's what I care about. Baltimore, yeah, if they can get this figured out week after week, the Cowboys were going to come back a little bit. They were at home. They didn't close the deal. The Cowboys, as you always say, the other coaches get paid too. So the Cowboys coaches who are getting paid too much, they came nearly back, but not all the way back. Keep giving Derrick Henry the ball, and Baltimore is going to be fine.
They've given up 557 rushing yards.
Yeah.
In the first 3 games of a season, that's more than they've given up since 1963, was 60 years ago. You average 5.4 when you run on them. 5.4. They've given up 8 rushing touchdowns. They've never done that as a franchise.
Another word.
And here's what they got coming up. At the Giants on Thursday, at Steelers, Lions, at 49ers.
Well,
that's
Giants,
a rough patch.
We
move now.
Thursday night.
Well, it's a quick turnaround. We move now to the Carolina Panthers, who had scored a total of 13 points in their first 2 games and benched their number 1 overall pick at quarterback Bryce Young for lack of production. Enter veteran Andy Dalton, and Carolina scored 36 points and pounded the Raiders. Wilbon, what does it say about Dalton, Young, and Panthers coach Dave Canales?
Well, I mean, Dalton's a veteran quarterback who has seen all this stuff. He's been around longer than Sam Darnold. Been around certainly longer than 7 years. I'm going to guess and say 11.
Yep.
Okay, I'm just a guess on my part.
More.
So.
More.
Is it more? Is it 13?
14.
Okay.
14.
So, 14. He's seen it all. That's why you have him. That's why you get a veteran. That's why the phrase veteran backup quarterback exists. You can look him up in the dictionary, and there could be a picture of the redhead. Okay? So good for him. But you know what, Tony? They still didn't do right by Bryce Young. Why was Bryce Young getting no snaps in the preseason? He's a second-year player who was 2 and something in the teens as a rookie.
2 and
why
16.
Why you not playing him in the preseason? That's just dumb.
2 and 16.
Okay, so that's a bad decision. Maybe Canales, a new head coach, will learn from that. But again, the franchise did poorly by this kid. Don't tell me one win over the Raiders, who got praised to the heavens by all the talking head former players on all networks a week ago, who stunk the joint out yesterday. Don't tell me the Raiders are John Madden's Raiders. So, of course, they were overstated too. So you can draw tons of conclusions from this if you want. I'm going to reserve some judgment.
Yeah, I'm going to draw a conclusion. I'm going to say that what this says to me is that you have to trade Bryce Young away from Carolina because the comparison with Andy Dalton is going to be too dear. Andy Dalton, when he came into the league a million years ago, was pretty good at Cincinnati. He couldn't win any playoff games, but he got Cincinnati, not a great team, to the playoffs 4 different times. But then he was largely meh. After that, he went to Dallas. He was in Chicago. I didn't even know this. New Orleans.
Sure.
He was 13-17 as a starter. He's 36 now, and he's seen as a stopgap. He had 319 yards yesterday and 3 touchdowns. The first quarterback all season, in all the NFL all season, to go for 300 plus and 3 touchdowns. So what can you conclude from this? Well, one thing you conclude is that some of the offensive players on Carolina are pretty good. The second thing you can conclude is that the coach made the right decision in benching Bryce Young. And the third thing is Bryce Young was the problem. It's an inescapable thing. He was the problem. He was 2-16 as a starter. He's young. He's a number 1 overall. He'll get another chance. I just hope it's not in Carolina, Mike. I hope it's somewhere else.
The franchise is the problem. That's the problem.
And maybe, yeah, sure, all the way up to the owner. Let's take a break. Coming up, is the Niners' loss to the Rams really unacceptable, as Fred Warner called it?
And was Colorado's comeback the most interesting result of this college football weekend? Damn right it was.
This reminds me, Mike, of Cleveland last year when 80-year-old Joe Flacco came in for Deshaun Watson when he got hurt, and people said, well, if Flacco's so... Time to find out what's popping with the populace. Let me get the first one here. Do I need glasses? Of course I do at my age. Fred Warner called the Niners' loss to the Rams, quote, unacceptable. Is that how you see it?
I mean, that's how he should see it. It's a division opponent. They had a big lead, but I don't quite see it that way, Tony. They were on the road against a division opponent. And as close as they really have to a rival, yes, the Rams are more of a rival than, say, the Cowboys, who some would say are the chief rival over the years of the 49ers. But they're playing this game in Los Angeles. I know when you're without your top 2 receivers, if you're the Rams, the Niners probably got a little cocky, but they're playing without critical players as well, including arguably their most important offensive player. So, you know, this was a result you look, and I turned it off. I did. I went to another TV in the upper left corner, you know, my setup, and I said, all right, enough of that. The Niners should have this game. It's unacceptable, but if I'm the Rams, I'm saying that's what you get. You're playing sort of in our home space here. We got you, and they'll face each other again in San Francisco.
So this is how I see it. I see it that the 49ers defense needs work, not the offense. The offense has 78 points in 3 games. That is 8th in the entire league, and they got the 3rd most yards. Not the quarterback. Brock Purdy had 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. Not the injuries, because although San Francisco was without Kittle and McCaffrey and Samuel, as you said, the 2 best receivers on the Rams weren't there either, Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. So they weren't here. No, this is the defense. So everybody praises Kyle Shanahan justifiably for the way he calls a game. But how about fixing your defense? You gave up 20 points in the second half. That's Baltimore Ravens land. Yeah. I mean, really, the defense didn't work at all. Didn't.
More mail?
You know, the 49ers have to go back to work. A couple of first downs late might have quelled that as well.
What was the most interesting result of the college football weekend?
It was easy for me. I mean, you can talk about Tennessee winning in Oklahoma. There's some things you can talk about. You talk about Michigan having that win. They sealed it late.
Yep.
USC should have gotten in the end zone, couldn't. It's Colorado. It's Deion. It's late night. It's like midnight in the East. And for those of us who want to have some late night football and some late night entertainment, I'm not switching over to Saturday Night Live. I got Deion and I got Shedeur Sanders making a play that's just physically not possible to make when you've been beat to hell like he was throughout that game with that offensive line being inadequate, to say the least. And he's rolling left and throwing back across his body. And then to win the game, to seal the deal, they need to keep from going to another overtime. And Travis Hunter, the best player in college football, makes a play, puts a hat on the ball, fumble, out of the end zone, game over. Those 2 dudes and Deion, that's a show. That's entertainment.
Yeah. I knew you would pick Colorado. I'm fine with it. I'm fine with all of that. A lot of people do think that Travis Hunter is the best player in all of college football.
Best.
So, okay, but I'm going to give you two others.
Okay.
I'm going to go back to one you mentioned. That was Tennessee goes to Oklahoma. I think it might be Oklahoma's first SEC game at home, right? And Tennessee beats them soundly.
They did.
And there are a lot of people in Oklahoma who remember Josh Heupel when he was the quarterback there. And maybe they wish he was the coach there because he seems to be doing a very good job at Tennessee. And the other game is the game between James Madison and North Carolina.
Ooh.
And James Madison is a small program, basically. It's like almost a 1AA program when compared to North Carolina, a Power 5 school in the ACC. James Madison put 53 points on Carolina in the first half. 53.
70
they
for the game.
totaled 70 for the game. They won 70-50 over a team that has been to bowl games 5 straight years with Mac Brown. Are you kidding me? 70?
But you have now done
70?
a 180 on James Madison. Last year, you didn't take them seriously. You said, oh, the state legislature, stay out of it. They were 10-0 last year, and they're 3-0 now.
Don't go to war.
Some love
Don't
for the
go to war with the
on
NCAA.
I-81.
And then they lost their bowl game. They lost their bowl game to Air Force, and I felt justified.
With the NCAA.
But what they did to North Carolina,
eviscerated.
Boom. Enough email. Let's take one last break. Still to come, 2 Monday Night Football games to predict. 2.
And another day of struggling to get into the end zone for the Bears offense. You could just say the Bears offensive line. Got to open up something. Something.
What conference is James Madison? I don't even know.
The Sun Belt.
What conference?
They got Marshall, South Alabama. They got some schools that, play a little bit.
Happy time, people. Happy 30th birthday, Hassan Reddick. This was yesterday. Reddick, after being traded from the Eagles. In his 2 years in Philly, Reddick had 27 sacks. In his career with Philly, Carolina, and Arizona, who drafted him 13th overall out of Temple, Reddick has 58 sacks and led the league in forced fumbles in 2020. Reddick was known to be unhappy with his contract with the Eagles. The Jets traded for him and did not give him a new contract. The Jets are 2-1, but they've beaten 2 weak teams, Tennessee and New England. Reddick is a 2-time Pro Bowler. The question is so often the same with the Jets. What are they doing?
Not just with him, with the team, though, with him. I mean, his agent, half this person's client roster seems to be holding out or holding in or threatening to hold out. I mean, he's got 30 years old. It's the prime of your life. You got to play and get paid. You got to figure out a way to do both. Get it done.
Happy anniversary, Jamal Charles. On this day 12 years ago, Charles rushed for 233 yards, including a 91-yard touchdown run in the Chiefs' 27-24 overtime win over New Orleans. That's the 8th most rushing yards ever in a single game. Charles is the NFL's all-time leader in yards per carry among players with at least 1,000 rushes, with 5.3 yards per carry. It seems the Chiefs have had a small player with blazing speed on the roster for nearly 2 decades, going back to Charles and Dante Hall and Tyreek Hill, and now rookie Xavier Worthy. Interestingly, Charles and Worthy both went to Texas, where Charles was a 4-time track All-American.
Tony, the Chiefs, maybe more than any other franchise, seem to value speed and having it and creating mismatches and doing things that you can't catch. Having a road runner, beep. Good for them.
Yeah. A melancholy trails to Eugene Mercury Morris. The star halfback for the Dolphins has died at the age of 77. Sharing the backfield with Larry Zonka and Jim Kick, Morris rushed for exactly 1,000 yards in 1972 and nearly that many in 1973, with the Dolphins winning back-to-back Super Bowls. The 72 team is the only one in NFL history to put up a perfect record, and Morris became known for celebrating whenever the last unbeaten team of a subsequent season would lose. After his career, Morris was convicted of cocaine trafficking, but later had that conviction overturned by the Florida Supreme Court and became an anti-drug advocate. Well, then I think Mercury, for a running back, is the greatest nickname ever in sports.
Tony, I'd like to argue with you and say the Kansas Comet of my hero, Gale Sayers, but Mercury is a truly great nickname. And watching him on that team, I wanted him to not be able to drink that champagne in 1985, but he got to drink it anyway when the Bears lost to his Dolphins.
Yeah, well, the Patriots went all the way to the Super Bowl game.
That's right, they went further. They did.
Had a real shot. Let's go to the big finish. Caleb Williams and your Bears lost to the Colts. Your analysis.
He got better. The offense got better. Not good enough in the ways to go. Expectations were completely out of whack. People, hey, wake up. This is hard. He's a rookie. Devontae Smith was knocked out of the Eagles' win over the Saints with a concussion. Was that a dirty play, Tony?
It's really close. It's such a hard hit, and it's hat to hat. It is. All four favorites won their openers in the WNBA playoffs. Your thoughts?
Tony, let's see. The Lynx, the Aces, the Sun, and the Liberty, they won. They're going to advance. That's going to be one hell of a semifinal round. Monday night doubleheader, Jags at Bills, Commanders at Bengals. Who you got?
Here's who I wish we got. I wish we got Bills and Bengals. I think they'll both win, but I'd like to see them play. Last one, your White Sox tied the 62 Mets for most losses. How many will they end up with?
Well, the only way they don't break the record is to win the final 6 games of the season, and they ain't going to do that. I'll say they'll lose 4 out of the 6. They're going to break it. They're going to Bob Beamon the record for all-time futility in baseball.
You've been saying this for months. You've been right on this one. We are out of time. We'll try and do better the next time. I'm Tony Kornheiser.
I'm a Southsider, though. Doesn't make me happy, even though I'm a Cubs guy. I'm Mike Wilbon. Same time tomorrow, Knuckleheads. You can get the podcast on the app or Apple Podcasts. And now, here's sports.
ESPN2. How do you like us now?